All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lasting Learning Podcast. I am so glad you're here, and I know in just a second you're going to be glad you're here as well. Today, I have a guest who I am just over the moon excited to have on the show. This is a woman who I have been kind of following on social media for a while. A good friend of mine is a good friend professionally and personally of hers. And if he is willing to vouch for her, then she is A-OK in my book. So today, we've got the friend of Brian Mindler, the friend of Dave Schmidt. We got Lindsay Titus joining us from New York. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome. Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, I am so excited. Your story is amazing, and it's powerful, and it's moving, and I'm ready to unpack it and share it with the world. Do you mind just taking a minute and introducing yourself to the world other than my friend and Brian Mindler's friend? Who are you? Who are you?
Absolutely. And I love that question. And I will start with that because I hated that question for so many years. So I am Lindsay Titus. I am a board certified behavior analyst living in Rochester, New York. And beyond that, though, I truly am a lifelong educator. So I think for me, that is where my true passion lies, in just teaching. Whether it's teaching my daughter, whether it's teaching staff that I work with, whether it's teaching myself a new skill or something new. I am the founder of Define University, which is my educational business where I teach teachers to do just that and define who they are by looking within, not by the role that they might serve or who they might interact with. It has to come from within first. For any strategy, anything out there to work, I wholeheartedly believe in that trust factor within yourself. And so that is what I do. I'm a behavior specialist for a local school district, as well as running that business, and as well as being a mom, wife, friend, all of those things. And I'm just really excited to be able to share my voice with the world. I think that's our superpower, is our story, it's our voice, and however we can share it in whatever way. To me, that's the beauty of everything right now, of what we get to do.
That's so good. So a behavior analyst, I'm going to have you break this down for me a little bit. I can only imagine that at times it can be frustrating for you because you're always analyzing the why behind everybody's actions. Like nobody ever does anything just spontaneously. There's always a reason behind it. Do you find yourself always getting inside of somebody else's head and trying to figure out their triggers?
I absolutely do, mostly mine. And so yes, but absolutely, because I know it's coming from somewhere. And so it's really hard for me to just spontaneously interact with someone or just have a good time with someone until I get to know them, until I'm close with them. And I can really stop analyzing and actually just start hearing and listening to what they're saying. And that goes for me too. One of my coaches that I work with continually tells me, stop analyzing, stop getting so bogged down with the details. And I'm like, you realize that's like my middle name. That's like what I do. But I believe that. I believe there's room for this clinical lens, but there has to just be this room for flexibility and for fun and for engagement. And that's been a big that I've absolutely had to work on. But yeah, I'm always, and whenever anyone finds out what I do, their behavior changes like immediately. Right. Even if it's just like a social, I meet them out. And I'm like, you don't have to change. I'm not judging. I'm not. And they're like, but that's what
now
you
I am. Yeah. Now I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to hide. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so you mentioned that you're a mom. You got a soon-to-be 6-year-old. Yes. I can only imagine with a behavior analyst for a mom, she's like amazingly perfect because you are able to just diagnose and treat every little misbehavior. Is that accurate, or do you lose your mind because there are some things you look at and say, I don't understand this?
Yes. Well, it's a little bit of both. I can understand it, but I definitely, that pressure of being a mom oversees it. So I miss a lot of the cues. And actually, so my daughter, very much like me, is a worrier. She has worries. She gets really nervous really fast. And so it was one thing that I worked on for a really long time with her. And finally, when she went to kindergarten, I said, all right, your turn. I need to just be mom. I need to, and I say just with a whole emphasis behind it, because there's a lot that goes into that role. And I needed somebody else to take that lens So I could just, it's, mom-daughter time. It's not me trying to always, we're always teaching, but I needed to kind of be a partner with somebody else. But she knows what I do. She knows what I do for a living. She will say, my mom is a behavior specialist and my mom is a behavior analyst. And she knows that. So she knows if and when I start talking about a behavior she did or something I'm doing, something I'm trying to change, she will hold me accountable. So much so, I went to make coffee a little bit ago and she said, Mom, you're trying to drink more water. You need to go get your water bottle. And I was like, man, I can't get away from it. So
That's awesome. So how did you decide that this was going to be the line of work you wanted to go into? Was it something you've always kind of just been innately curious about?
Yeah, so teaching, yes. Behavior, no.
Okay.
I grew up, so I moved, actually, I was born in Canada. And my family moved to Buffalo, New York when I was in second grade. And my second grade teacher is that teacher for me, that teacher that I think a lot of kids have as to, if you do go into teaching, that's the reason why, for the positive. She was that teacher for me. I came from Canada with a pretty strong accent, was quickly made fun of by a lot of the kids. So I learned to be quiet. I learned that, well, I'm just gonna not share anything because then they can't make fun of me. And she really got my voice to shine that year in just multitude of ways by being quiet, but she knew that I could write. She knew I liked to write things out. She knew that if her and I had a private conversation, we could talk about it. And so that she was that reason of me wanting to go into teaching. Fast forward all the way through, I did my student teaching, and I had decided just on a whim, actually as a recommendation from one of my professors, to do dual, to do gen ed and special ed. And at that point, I was like, but I'm pretty convinced I'm going to go gen ed. Like, that's where I'm feeling it. And he's like, just give yourself opportunities. You just never know. I was like, okay. Well, clearly he saw something in me, because once I did my first practicum in a special ed classroom, I was like, I'm sold. That's it for me. And that's kind of where things went. And then I graduated. I was lucky enough I had a job offer at one of the schools that I student taught at. And that first year happened, and I was like, what did I get myself into? I had a class of 4 students, and I couldn't figure it out. They were 4 students that were brought in from outside districts, and we just recreated. But my classroom was a kindergarten and first grade classroom in a 4th grade hallway with 4th grade furniture, 4th grade materials, and I was just lost. And actually, that's how I met Brian. He was my college professor that year. He came into my classroom to help me out. And, since then, behavior has always been that, why do kids do that? What's going on? What else can I do? And what led me to go down the BCBA path is I was so stuck on, I had done what I had learned in class, in my one behavior management class in college, and it just wasn't working. I wasn't able to utilize the strategies I knew. So I'm like, I've got to be missing something. And so I went back to school. I consider myself an avid lifelong learner. I went back to school. I obtained my BCBA, and I really, since then, I got out of the quote unquote direct teaching role, and I've really been doing behavior consultation for a variety of schools. I've worked residential, I've worked in-home private therapy, and now I'm back to working in a public school.
Oh, well, first of all, God bless you. I spent a little time as a principal at a school in Florida. And in Florida, there's a designation for students, a label for some students that they throw on them. It's EBD, emotionally behavioral disability or disturbance, depending on which person you're talking to. And my elementary school had EBD self-contained preschool classrooms and self-contained EBD K-5 classrooms. And those teachers that teach in those classrooms, I'm going to get the philosophy and whether or not I agree or disagree with the whole premise of self-contained, all that out of the way. But the teachers that are in those classrooms are absolute godsends, because they are not just teaching content. They're not just plowing through pacing guides and curriculum. I mean, they have some intense jobs where every day they're managing whether or not desks are going to get flipped over at them, whether they're going to get cussed out by 6-year-olds, whether or not a stapler is going to be thrown across the room. I mean, it is intense. Mm-hmm. Is that where your world kind of is right now? Are you in those kinds of environments, in those classrooms, working with teachers with those kinds of needs? Or are you sprinkled out through gen ed classrooms looking at clip charts and things like that?
So I do, it's kind of all of the above. So right now I am I am used more in a consultant type role for where I work. So, which I love actually, because I get to, I'm not everywhere, but I am everywhere. So I get to kind of tap into all different things. So I work very closely with our self-contained classrooms. I also do help support gen ed teachers with students in their classrooms. I run trainings. I do, a monthly newsletter for my staff. It's really, my goal is always whether I'm at work or not, it's always the ripple effect. I don't want anyone to be dependent on one person, on seeking one person or trying to copy one person. I want someone to do it their way using the strategies and knowledge that, I'm teaching. And so that's really what I aim to do, is that I aim to allow a teacher to see confidence in their ability, using their strengths, using their story, teach them how to connect with kids that maybe don't seem that they can connect with, build that relationship, and then use the strategies. So it's a little bit of everything. And I'm grateful our schools have really solid teams to begin with. And then so they work as a team, and then I'm often called in if as the team, they're kind of like, well, have we considered this, or what have we thought about this, to really give that neutral lens, since I'm not housed in any of the district or any of the school buildings. So it allows me to really stay creative, stay kind of on the ball, and really think outside the box for some of those kids that really the traditional models aren't working.
Do you think having that consultation model helps you maintain sort of an objective lens when you're coming in in an analyst role? Because I know at times some teachers, that they start to look at things subjectively, and they start to own things personally, good, bad, or ugly. And sometimes it's the kid is bad, or they start to own it themselves and think, I'm just a horrible teacher, or whatever the kid, and you can come in kind of as a fresh lens. Does that help? Does it hurt? Do you wish you were housed within a classroom or building, or do you like the fact that you kind of travel?
For me, I like traveling. Now, granted, if you catch me on a day where I've been at 6 schools, I might sit in the snow and the cold and the rain. I might say, give me one. But I really do. And I really love the ability that I get to sometimes be that validation. I get to be that outsider, even though I'm inside, coming in and saying, you're doing a great job. You're doing all, these things. And here, let's look at it this way, or I can present those coaching questions and really create a relationship, mostly with the adults. And that is something, one of those things, I went into teaching thinking I was going to love working with kids, and I was going to be, front and center, so to speak, in terms of a classroom. And what I actually found is I love the behind the scenes role. I love doing the observations, the observing, looking through the data and the analysis, and really training and modeling. And I love that aspect. And I think that's just really important. I kind of pushed that for a long time. So I was like, no, I went to school to be a teacher. I should want to be a teacher. And, one of my taglines is get out of Shouldville, because if you're living in Shouldville, you're doing it for somebody else. And I think I tried that for so long, and it just didn't work. And so for me, I love it. I love going, we have 10 schools. I love going to all the schools. I love working K through 12th grade. I just love, every aspect of getting to really hone in my expertise and my experience so that I can meet the needs of whichever staff may need me on any given day.
That's good. So, oftentimes we talk about reaching every kid, and you threw a tagline, so I'll throw one of my taglines, and I'll say the only way to reach every kid is to reach each kid. And I feel like that's what you're kind of describing right now, is that you don't go in with these universal practices. And I think oftentimes as teachers, or maybe just Americans, we look for the answer as opposed to being okay with finding an answer. And, maybe you go on Pinterest or Teacher Pay Teacher, and you'll find a cool little clip chart, or you'll find a color wheel, or a thumbs up, thumbs down sticker chart, or something. You say, that's the answer because Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Smith used it. How do you balance that kind of mindset where truly everybody is going online right now and trying to find the answer for every kid, with also trying to make things individualized and manageable for teachers?
Yeah, I know. I put a post a couple weeks ago, and I said, it's okay to say no to free resources, because I was feeling overwhelmed, and I put free resources too. So I was like, you can say no to me too. It's okay. I think for me, I do use the tiered level, not in a sense of so specific, 80% tier 1, 20%, but I look at it that if what you're doing is reaching the majority of your students, keep doing it. It's working for your students, right? What is your goal? What's your vision? I teach teachers all the time to make sure you have a mission statement for your classroom. What are the standards of your classroom? Because if And I do that for my business. I do that for Define You, because what I was finding without those is everything sounds great. Just like you mentioned, right? Every resource is perfect, and every resource you could find a use for, absolutely. But if we don't use what we have, it's not useful. It ends up being clutter. We feel overwhelmed. So for me, when I have those standards, I can easily say, does this fit in with my standard? And it's easily replicated in the classroom too. Does this fit with the type of teacher that I define myself as? And so I think for teachers right now, I think go as simple as you can, and then we tweak for those 1 or 2 or 3 students that might need it. Because at the end of the day, if 80% of your kids don't, then you can keep doing what you're doing. And if 5% do, then we individualize for those kids for that time period. I think what often happens for me, especially for me, I'll come in and people have maybe a thought about what a behavior analyst does, and they've seen other people, and I try and be very real. I try and be very real, and I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, because if they don't feel confident in doing it, they're not going to do it. And so I really work with the teacher to make sure, does this feel good in alignment with your classroom? The strategy can stay the same. I don't need it to look this one way. How is it going to work for this class? What does the student need? What is the need? What's the function? There's so many questions that come into play. And if we are looking for the perfect thing, it's just not out there, right? Anything could be the perfect thing. It depends on what is needed in that moment. So my biggest thing is start simple. And I even tell teachers, when you think you found simple, go one step beneath it. Go even simpler, because we make it more complex, and then we don't want to do it, because that's human behavior. We're actually really all pretty lazy. We want to do the simple things.
It's so true. And you said that so much more eloquently than I could have, because a month or 2 ago, I threw out a tweet or something on Instagram. I don't remember what platform it was, but I said, a focused leader says no to good ideas all the time. And I got so much pushback from people that said, no, people have good ideas, let them run with it. But I still stand pat with that I think oftentimes we're chasing just good and every little good thing. I mean, John Hattie, I'll bring out his research. I know he's been talked to death, and we see the graphics all over the place, even though nobody's actually read his stuff. But John Hattie, if you read his stuff, actually says 99% of the stuff we do in classrooms is good, but that doesn't mean it's the best thing for your kids. It is our obligation not just to go out there and find a treatment to give the pink pill and the blue pill because it could work. You don't just pop an aspirin every time you're feeling sick. You got to find the right cure for what's ailing you. You've got to have that focused lens.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, through the lens of behavior analyst, are you able to go into situations and have a strengths-based approach where you're looking for the gifts that people have and that thing that makes them tick? Or do you find yourself naturally gravitating towards, there's a weakness that I need to try to bring up and elevate?
So I started out, and I'll be true, honestly, I started out going in and immediately saying, well, this is what's missing. This is what we don't have. This is what isn't in the classroom. And through coaching of my own, through having supportive administration that have supported me by teaching me, by saying, when you go in this way, this is how it's perceived. And I was like, oh, but that's not my intent. My intent was to help. My intent was to do this. Was to show them what could be. And I had to realize it's not my classroom. It's not my room. It's not my community. I'm a part of it, absolutely. But so what I've learned is when working with a teacher is no different than working with a student. It's all about relationships. Yes. As soon as I can pair and I can build rapport with that teacher, we are more likely to have a dialogue, not an argument. We're going to have a conversation, not a power struggle. And so I use the same strategies I teach, I use with myself to make sure that I'm as effective as I can be, because I really, in what I do each day, I really do look at myself as a coach. I'm not an administrator. I don't tell people, not that administrators tells them what to do, but I'm not that level. I'm a coach. This is what I do. I'm going to provide suggestions. And at the end of the day, I'm going to do so in a way that it's working with the teacher, just like I want the teacher to work with the student. I don't want teachers just to tell kids what to do. We know, again, that's going to work for some of them. That worked for me in school. If you told me to do it, I was going to do it. My daughter's the exact same way. But I can find a number of kids that you say, go do this, and they're going the opposite direction. Right. So if there's no relationship, just like if I don't have a relationship with staff, that's why that challenge can happen. And I see that with teachers and paraprofessionals. I see that between administrators and teachers. So I think the notion of, even relationships in general, I like to, let's reduce that lens to what does that actually look like? How do we strengthen that? And I think you hit it a lot with, we have to hit on people's strengths first.
Right.
Because I always say strengths lead to solutions. If you're going to focus on a deficit, it's going to lead to resentment.
Right.
Because if you're focusing on what I can't do, I have no hope, no excitement, no desire to do it. If you're going to, show me what I can do, I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to build where I don't have those skill sets.
That's awesome. It reminds me of the saying, what we do, they do. How we treat the adults is how the adults treat the kids. And I'm thinking through the lens, you said you're not an administrator. And I think that's an advantage of yours, because you don't have to go into classrooms and environments with a little clipboard, with the Danielson rubric or the Marzano rubric or whatever evaluation instrument is being used. I think oftentimes we train our administrators when they're using those rubrics to go in and truly do it from a deficit mindset. You look at where the teacher is on that rubric, and you focus on those weaknesses to try to bring them up. We're so focused on making what's weak average as opposed to making what's amazing great. Mm-hmm. And then our teachers do the same thing for our kids. We have the expectation 100% on every assignment in every class to get those straight A's, as opposed to saying, where's your passion area? Where's your gifts? Where are your strengths? And let's focus on those and grow them. Yeah. So I'm curious, Lindsay Titus, what is your strength?
That is a great question. My strength is I can relate to really anybody, anybody that, and relate in a way that I can really, I think I've gotten really good at hearing what people are saying and not creating this assumption behind it. So really being able to listen and tailor, whether I'm going into a kindergarten classroom and I'm going to provide assistance to a kindergartner, or switch gears and head on into a senior high school classroom and provide some content there, provide some assistance there. I think, being able to stay extremely organized in my thoughts, I think is a huge part of my role, and being able to switch very quickly while also being 100% intentional and present in the moment is a skill that didn't come easily, but now that I've learned to do it, it's something that gets me over that hurdle. It gets me to make those connections and gets me to really, just help celebrate the success of our students, of our staff. So that for me, that's where I think, when people let me know, like, this is what, this is why I came to you, this is why I love you, this is what you helped me out with. It's that simple approach, but it's being able to relate to the person that I'm talking with, that I don't give just a scripted response. I'm not going to send, here, try A, B, and C, and let me know how it goes. I'm going to be right there coaching you, teaching you, guiding you all the way through.
Are you able to assume the good and doubt the bad? I mean, do you believe that everybody's truly doing things with the best of their intentions?
I do. Yeah. I believe everyone's doing the best they can with what they have, where they're at right here, right now. That's like, there is no other way for me, because that's just it. It's the same with myself. What I do is exactly what was meant to be done for that moment. I've learned to, it's done is better than perfect. Just get it out there. And it's my goal. I think comparison and competitiveness can break a person down. And for me, the only person I'm comparing and competing against is me, being better today than yesterday, and then learning through today to grow into tomorrow. That's what it's all about, so. How
does that work for you as a business owner? Like, as an entrepreneur who's out there trying to make those inroads, you've got to play the comparison game, don't you?
Yes, I do. But I think having those foundational truths to anchor yourself into, I think very easily our mind wanders all day long, right? I can be engaged in a really great conversation. I start, I see pizza and I'm like, oh, I want pizza, right? Like, I get distracted just like anybody else. But what happens is I've learned to have these foundational truth and anchors, so they bring me back. So when I am doing my business and I start to compare myself to somebody that's way more established or has the credentials or has this many, followers or this many downloads, I have that moment, and then I say, but they haven't done it by you. It hasn't been done by you. They haven't heard Lindsay's story. They haven't heard it through Lindsay's voice yet. So keep doing what you're doing, because that's what I want, right? I think modeling is the best behavior strategy, one of the best behavior strategies we have. So if I can show other people how to show up, even when they might be comparing, even when they might not feel like they're there yet or ready yet, then that's what I want them to do. I want them to take that risk. I want teachers to be risk takers, just like they're asking their students to be risk
Yes.
takers every day. So
Yes,
I
that's
just
so
remind
good.
myself and my mission and my vision, and I bring it back, you know, and I luckily have great mentors. I have accountability partners. I have an amazing family that keeps me grounded when I have those moments.
Well, I think that's what you said there was kind of profound. Yeah, I watched Shark Tank and The Profit and all those reality shows about small businesses and how to make them better. But I made this connection to what you were just talking about, to the actual classroom as well. I think having those foundational truths is so important, because it is tempting to chase the newest, shiniest, flashiest thing, whatever it is, or to try to be the jack of all trades to all people, as opposed to saying, what is it that I stand for? What is that hill I'm going to die on? What is my individual strength? Whether you're a classroom teacher or if you're a small business owner, you are an entrepreneur. You are out there selling an idea to people. The people might be 6 years old. The people might be 60 years old, but you're selling an idea. And you have to figure out what your core is. What is that thing that I think Dave Burgess says it, or somebody says it, where what is it that you could sell tickets to? What is it about you that makes you a draw? And people don't want to admit it, but classroom teachers, you're entertainers. You really are. You are put on stage to perform for an audience and to get kids to buy what you're selling. And you have to own who you are on your stage and on your platform.
Yeah.
So when you're working with teachers, is that something you try to guide them through as well? Is who are they, or are you just focused on the kid?
No, absolutely. More times than not, we talk about them as a teacher. That's my goal, is to get them to be able to. I might start with the student because that's why I'm there. You know, I don't come in and start telling me, hey, tell me about yourself and all of that. But I think in order to get, you know, again, it's not about the one kid. I want to teach so that they can learn and really take it and go with it. Because if it's Johnny today, it's Sam tomorrow, it's this person the next day, right? And so I want to teach. I want to teach new skills. I don't want to just teach them so they say, okay, I'll do it, and then I walk away and it's not done. I want them to feel confident in it. And the only way to do that is to recognize, what are their strengths? What are they looking for? What is their goal as an educator? Where do they see themselves? What is something they're looking to improve? And I think all of those, and again, I don't do those all at one time. You know, I do them based on how I feel connected, and how, you know, part of it is how often I can be in their room and I can be where they are. And, you know, and it's done little questions at a time. You know, I take notes galore. You know, Post-its are my best friends, because it's remembering those things. So if I go into a classroom and, you know, I hear the teacher's daughter just had a baby, I want to remember, next time I go into that classroom, ask about that baby, ask about their kids, ask about that. Well, I can't remember 10 schools worth of information, so I write it down. I take notes, and before I go in the next time, I review it, so I know what questions to ask to, again, continue that relationship. And I hear that from teachers all the time. How do I remember what to ask? How do I remember, you know, who said what and this? And I said, you got to write it down.
Right.
You write it out of our heads and put it down, and then use those notes. If it's not used, it's not useful. So I think there's just little tricks and tips that we can use. We just have to stay present enough to do it. When we keep worrying about the future, we forget where we're at right now.
I think that's so good. It made me think of my dentist, and I actually had a conversation with my dentist about that very thing last year. I went into the dentist. I only go see my dentist once every 6 months, right? And they've got hundreds and hundreds of patients. But I sat down and they had a conversation with me like we just talked yesterday. And they remembered what was going on with my job and my kids. And I said, how in the world do you remember this? And she just spun the computer screen, and there are all these notes. And she said, I just read this before I call you back. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so easy, but yet ingenious. That's what we need to be doing as educators. Absolutely. Oh, that's so good. So good.
I think people see and they're like, well, she just has a really good memory. No, I have actually one of the worst.
I just know how to read.
I just write it down. I literally write down what we eat for dinner every night. Otherwise, I would probably make the same thing, because I am so focused on the present moment that once it's happened, I know what happened. It served me. It was experience. I learned from it. But I'm so focused on today. I'm so focused. It's one of the things that through the mindset work I've done, I try not to get distracted. I try and stay really focused in on what I'm doing, because if I'm doing it with only like half of me, then I'm not really doing it. And so, but that can be mentally exhausting. It can absolutely. And so But it's, again, if I try and create this huge system and complex system to remember things, it's not going to happen. So you just write it down, take a note, put it in a notebook, and there you go. So simple always wins.
Oh, it is profound. I mean, even if I'm just thinking about like behavior management plans and systems where people are calculating points to earn the trinkets and they have to remember how many demerits and circles and pluses and stickers. I'm just, you can't keep track between morning and afternoon or first hour and third hour, let alone September to June. It's just, simple. Just write things down. It's so easy.
Yeah. And it goes, behavior plans are one of the things that people love them or they hate them, right? Yep. They're same thing with reinforcement. If I bring up reinforcement to some people, I get, you love it or you hate it. But what I've learned is it's because it's how people define them. It's how people associate with them. It's what they've associated with them themselves. And I think, again, with plans, thinking back to what we talked about, if you have a class and you have 8 plans, I wouldn't look at the individual plans. If I was called in, I'd say, let's look at your class plan. Let's look at the class culture. Let's look at the class community. Where is engagement? Where if you've got that many kids needing a specific plan, we're missing something. We're missing the simple. We're missing something. We have to add in more passion projects. We got to add in a little bit more creativity. Where are the class, do they know the rules? Have they practiced them? Have they, been held accountable for them? Because if we keep adding individual plans, you're not going to remember them, right? Again, on top of the content, the standards, and everything else under the sun. So let's take it back a step. And that's oftentimes what I do. And it might not be 8, it might even be 3. And I might say, hey, can we just have a conversation? I just have a few questions.
Right.
And we'll have a conversation about it. Simple is always better. Adding a new plan, if the kid needs it, I'm absolutely there. But a lot of times we can just take a step back and we can actually move a whole lot, forward based on that.
It's so smart. And so I want to go back in the 80s here and just say, duh. I mean, but it makes so much sense, but it does. It's, in education, we talk so often about the pendulum that swings and how if we wait 20 years, what we did 20 years ago will come back. And it's true, but I think it's true because oftentimes we jump right into what's new and we throw out what was good already. We chase the new shiny trinket and we lose sight of what's simple and what works and just hold on to it. And I mean, you just, you nailed it. Just write it down, make it simple. Like I'm thinking right now, we've thrown out the word differentiation, and instead of people truly diving into what does differentiation mean, what does it look like, we start to think, okay, that means every single kid has to be different, and I have to do something different for everybody because it's in our heads. That's the only way we can make sense of it. So then we go to that extreme, and a year later we say that didn't work. So we go right back where we were, as opposed to just find what works and keep going.
Right. And I think, I think one thing too, and I forget this even with myself and my own daughter, is kids can have a bad day.
Yes.
Kids are allowed a bad day.
Grown-ups can have bad days.
You're allowed a bad day. And so things will happen. And that's a lot of times where I'll get a call. I'll get a call after that one day. And that's my first question is, was this just a bad day? And they might not know the answer, but I'll say, what's been going on the last 2 weeks? Well, nothing. It's been totally fine. All right, I need you to dig a little deeper then, find out what happened, what was different that day, because we know behavior is purposeful. It's serving a purpose. It's solving a problem. And for that day, what he or she has been doing didn't work. So what else was missing? I'm not, I share a quick example. A lot of trainings I do, I had a student who all of a sudden started biting. Okay, and team came, we need a plan. And I said, whoa, where did this come from? Come to find out, he had 4 rotten teeth in the bottom of his mouth, 2 on each side. So there wasn't going to be any intervention plan that was going to help this student until he went to the dentist. And then the biting went away. So he had a bad day. Now, we didn't just rest and say, well, he had a bad day, because it was a significant, behavior. But if we hadn't dug a little deeper, none of the things we would have tried would have been effective.
Yeah.
So I think we want that answer. We live in this fast-paced service delivery world where I want it now. If I can't get it now, I'm going to go find a way to get it now. And so I think it's just important that slowing down doesn't mean we're doing anything with less intent, with less heart, with less joy and care, but it actually means we're taking that moment to really do what is best, because we're asking those questions that are going to get us that answer we're looking for.
I feel like, number one, if I ever have an opening, I'm going to try to recruit you to leave New York and come to Michigan, because you have all of the answers to all of the questions that that I would want to ask. So people that have listened to this podcast before might have heard me say that when I interview anybody for a job, whether it's an administrator, behavior analyst, counselor, teacher, parapro, I only ask 2 questions. Anybody else can ask whatever questions they want. 2 questions I ask are, who are you really? So tell me a little bit about yourself, which you nailed that one. And the other question I ask is, how do you know if it's been a good day or a bad day? Those are truly the only 2 questions I ask, because I want to know whether or not they can reflect and look back and determine good, bad, or ugly.
Mm-hmm.
How do you determine if it's a good day or bad day for you? Not necessarily for the kids, but when you're driving home at the end of the day, dealing with 10 schools and a whirlwind that you go through, do you have bad days? Or are you able to just say, no, it's all good, I'm helping people?
So I don't have bad days, so I don't call them bad days. I have successful days and I have growth days.
Okay.
So I will drive home and I will reflect on my day. What went really, and I always start with celebrations. Anybody that knows me knows gratitude and celebrations are anchors for me. I celebrate the littlest things, so much so that people make fun of me, and I'm like, it's okay, because pretty soon you're going to be on the celebration train too, and they are usually within a couple weeks. But I will drive home, and I have about a 20-minute commute. So I will reflect on my day. I will reflect on how I'm feeling. Was it a successful day? What did I do really well? And then what can I grow from today? What was my growth moment? Where, what did I not, where didn't I shine? Where did I shine the brightest I can? And there's not something every day. And some days it's really hard to find the success and it's really easy to find the growth. But I stopped looking at it at good or bad because of the nature of those definitions. There's nothing bad about what I did. Everything I did was from me. So if I'm doing something bad, what does that say about me? So instead, it's me. It's 100% me. And I'm going to own everything I do. If it's a mistake, I'm going to own it as a mistake. If it was successful, I'm going to own it as successful and I'm going to share it and I'm going to teach it. But for me, if I just say it was a bad day and then I stay there, I don't think we can do anything. To me, clarity always comes from action. Change comes from action. So what am I going to do about it? Where, if I sat in a meeting that I didn't voice my opinion, where I sat back and I kind of let other people speak for me. Okay, so what am I going to do next time to make sure that doesn't happen? Sure, I could beat myself up about it, and I have years past. The reason I know this is effective for me now is because it's not what I did then. And, I think that's the biggest learning point we all have, is to learn from our experiences, which is going to change our behavior. What happens with a lot of our kids is they don't have learning experiences they can learn from yet, especially if you teach younger kids. And so for us, sometimes we have to show them what those learning paths have been like, which means you have to know what they are, which means you have to have the relationship. So for me, that's why it all relates together. Yes, I'm a behavior analyst, but at the foundation of who I am, it's an educator, and it's somebody that is looking to teach that every kid, every person has a choice and a voice, and that they have to own the choice and the voice that they say to the world. And that's what I live every day.
I got to ask you, are you able to walk on water? Because I'm just listening to this. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just, you're amazing. Can you turn water into wine? I mean,
right?
What other gifts do you have?
So it's been a lot of growth.
It's impressive is what it is. I'm imagining, so if I brought you into my school, my district, to do a workshop or a conference with my teachers, number one, their jaws are just going to be on the floor saying, oh my gosh, so much truth, so much wisdom. But what would that look like? What does that look like? What is the thing that you try to instill into teachers wherever you go?
Yeah, so I try and make it as relatable, right? Again, I want to model at all point in time. So I'm going to model what my goal is for them to go and do with kids. So it's, very much, I want to say it's interactive in a sense of I try and use that element of suspense, right? Keeping them going, but really using a combination of teaching through my experiences, through stories, through what I've learned, but also using some pretty powerful reflective questions. How does this relate to you? What can you take away from? Can you implement first? Because I think what often happens in trainings is that we hear it, we maybe take 10% of it, and then by the next week, we're like, where'd that packet go? Where's that PowerPoint? I know she said something, but I can't remember what it was. So for me, if you can do something with it in the moment, I think you're more likely then to remember it. And if, for me, the doing might not be role-playing everything, it might not be acting out everything, but if you can make an immediate connection as to, oh, this is the kid that I'm thinking about in this moment, and this is how I'm going to do it, then I believe they're going to walk out of there feeling confident to do it. Because without that confidence, you're not going to take that first step, just like our kids don't either. So my goal is to make it is one, it needs to be fun. It needs to be interactive. It needs to be something that's going to be more engaging than someone pulling out their phone, opening their computer, which means it's got to involve, excitement, slides, music, me walking around. Because same thing with teaching. If we're not engaging, I can find something within arm's reach that's going to be more engaging than that.
Right.
Giving them that concept and that excitement that they can do it, that it's easy and simple, nothing complex. If it's complex, I don't want it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to share it. And just having this reminder of why you went into teaching. No one went into teaching to learn the standards that I've ever met. No one went into teaching to, get 100% of their kids to get 100% on the state test. Again, haven't met them. Maybe they're out there. My goal, number one, people is they wanted to teach kids. And so I want to reignite that excitement in a teacher, why you went into teaching. And if you can walk out with that, with some tangible tips and feeling good about it, then I've done my job.
So I know you're not an evaluator, you're not a an administrator, but what is that successful teacher? You say that, they don't go into to necessarily master all the standards or to get 100% proficiency, but yet that's how a lot of states now are identifying the master teachers. If Lindsay Titus is going into a school and having to identify the best of the best, what are you looking for?
So I'm looking for reflective qualities. I'm looking for growth. I'm looking for a set goal. I do believe there is goals, right? We have to know where we're at and we have to know where we're going and what's our plan to get there. And for someone that can own, this is what I'm awesome at, and this is where I want to get better, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm doing it through a way of I'm not letting the excuses hold me back. If I want to try something new, I want to try something new. If it doesn't work, I want to know the why. I want to know your reflection behind it, so that what can we change next time so that it did work. And it does have to relate to the content. Absolutely. It's not just I'm going to show up and do this fun activity because I think the kids might like it, or benefit from it. It's what are they going to learn? How does it impact them? How does it show them that there's value in what I'm teaching, and what does it relate to? So I think for me, success is being able to set that goal, being able to work through it, and being able to receive feedback and having, constructive conversations about where is it going, what went well, what didn't, and really just being able to be a true leader in your classroom, which means, learning is circular then. I'm learning from my students and I'm teaching my students at the same time. Is the classroom all teacher-based, or are the students speaking most of it? Are the students asking questions? Do they have autonomy in the classroom? Are they learning mastery? Is their purpose? If I go ask a student, hey, why do you guys think you're learning this? And they can tell me, well, because of course it relates to this, and now we can do this. And did you know this is how you make that? And then I know that the teacher is getting to the kid. If they're saying, well, so we can pass the test next week, then to me, we're at that beginning level. There's still room to grow. That's not bad. That's baseline. Then we grow from there.
Yeah. So I hope everybody that's listening to this just really zeroed in on her definition. It wasn't about academic proficiency. That's a part of it. You want your kids to know things and to learn things and to grow things. Nor was it about having this classroom where it's just kids are compliant and sitting in their nice little neat rows and they're quiet. It was basically about the students being in control, the students running things, without it being anarchy. The students are there for a purpose. They understand the purpose and they bought in, they're working it, they're engaged, and the teacher's just that facilitator because they've established that trust and that relationship where they are a part of the class. It's not their class, they're a part of the class. And getting to that level is truly masterful. And those teachers are rare, but you're out there trying to make more of them. And I commend you for that. That's awesome. And I know parents everywhere right now are saying, thank you. That's exactly what I want. I want my kid to be independent. We focus as parents so often on having a kid today who's compliant and follows all of our rules. But our job as parents is really to make our kids independent. Our job is to make it so that our kids can live without us. And that's the responsibility of teachers too, is to make sure that your students can continue to learn without you. And that is very hard to give up. So amazing. So I got to ask you, Lindsay, I told you before we started that I ask every single one of my guests a question. towards the end of the conversation. And this is going to be hard for you, I have a feeling, because you have said some amazing things. I mean, my notebook right now is just filled with Titusisms. You dropped so much truth. It's ridiculous. And I'm going to go back and watch this over and over and over again. I'm wondering, though, when people are listening to this, they might be on their way to work. They might be laying in bed. They might be mowing the lawn. Who knows what they're doing? And their mind is probably racing with a lot of truth as well. If you had to pinpoint one truth, one mic drop moment that you say, this is the thing I want you to zero in on, focus on this, put all those other distractions away. This is what it boils down to. What is your mic drop moment?
So I think for me, I'm a big language person. I love words. I love play on words and things like that. And so if you take the word you, Y-O-U, that's where define you came from. And oftentimes when I write educator, I take the you from the middle and I turn it into Y-O-U. You are the one that defines who you are. There is nobody else that gets to define who you are as a teacher, as a person, as a mom, as a wife, as a spouse, you fill in the blank. And I think the moment that we can learn to define who we are from within, what we stand for, what we love, what our strengths are for, instead of by the roles that we serve, I think that's where the magic happens, because I'm going to serve multiple roles in a day. I'm going to do different things in a day, but in each one of them, I'm 100% me. And I own 100% of me. And nobody ever gets to take that away. The other way I look at it is you're an expert in a lot of things. As educators, we're experts in so many things, but we are only the expert on one thing and one thing only, and that is ourselves. I am the only expert there is of Lindsay Titus. And if I lose sight of that, then I start linking to anybody else that I can find. I start saying, well, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that. That's a good idea. I'll do that. And instead, when I own 100% of me, I can say, that's a good idea. Does that fit in with what I believe? That's a great idea. How can that work for me? I get to define who I am. No one else gets to do that for me.
That might be the most masterful mic drop moment I've ever had. You literally took that entire conversation and you wrapped it up into one nice little package and said, here you go, everybody. If you didn't listen to the first half hour, just focus on this and you'll get the entire show. That was awesome. Well done. Well done. I really do appreciate you taking time to connect with me. Personally, I gained so much from this conversation. I know listeners out there are listening to this as well. If people want to connect with you beyond this, how do they reach you?
Absolutely. So I have, first I have a website, Define University, again, that Y-O-U. I also have a podcast, same, Define University with Lindsay Titus. And on social media, I'm primarily on Instagram, lindsay.titus828. I am over on Facebook as well. Just search Lindsay Titus and you'll find me.
And all of those things are legit. I follow and subscribe to them all and am inspired all the time. So I'll have all the links in the show notes, both on YouTube and on the podcast, wherever you're listening. So just click the links and follow along and continue to be inspired. Lindsay Titus, thank you again for being here today. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.